Hello, everybody, and welcome to Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I am Nick Vete. He's Ricardo Martinez Paz, and we have two victories for Pennsylvania pro sports this week. The Steelers and the Eagles both getting huge wins. The Eagles over their division rival Cowboys going into the bye week. The Steelers keeping pace in the AFC playoff picture, in the AFC North divisional race with a win over the Titans on Thursday Night Football last week. So we're going to break down both of those games and talk in depth about both of these teams. But before we do that, Ricardo, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, man. Hey, I saw you this past weekend. It was a great time at your place. Fantastic, dude. How are you doing?
I am doing well. It was definitely a fun time to be had. Definitely feeling a little bit of the after effects this week. I don't know. I've had like a little. I don't feel sick or anything. I think my voice is holding up all right. It's just a weird little like head cold type thing I got going on. But I don't know. I'm making through it. I mean, are you get any of that? Or are you holding up pretty healthy?
I mean, my voice was kind of shot the next day, but my ears also were ringing like crazy for a whole day. But because
I actually experienced that same thing. So as you can probably infer, we had a good night Saturday night. But yeah, I mean, we don't need to. This isn't speaking Ricardo and Nick's weekend adventures. This is Speaking Steagles. So let's get into things. Yeah, two huge wins for both of these teams. I think let's start with the Steelers because the Eagles are going into the bye week, so we'll kind of sandwich them in between the Steelers. Recap from week 9 and the preview of week 10. So let's talk a little bit about how the Steelers got this done. They won 20-16 against the Titans. I don't even know if I really, played into it as much as maybe I could have in our last episode about just how big of a game this was. But that Thursday night, when we were getting going, the more and more I was thinking about it, the more I was like, man, this is going to be a big win if they can get it done, just because, you start the week off on the right foot. I feel like there was a big difference between where they sit now winning the game and being 5-3 versus, being 4-4, 500. And then all of a sudden, 3 games, the stretch of 3 games at home, you'd save this last game for the Packers as potentially that only win in that 3-game homestand. So they get this win, and I felt like we finally saw Ricardo, I say we finally saw some life from the offense, and it's like, holy cow, they finally got a first quarter touchdown, opening drive touchdown nonetheless. But, I feel like it's the same song and dance where one week it's, man, is this finally where we see the Steelers offense turning the page? And then, the next week it's, wow, the Steelers offense, lets you down so much just like that. I don't know, man. Are they finally turning the corner here? They looked a lot better on offense this week, I felt, overall, in kind of all facets of the offense. To me, it was probably their best game. Kenny Pickett didn't light up the stat sheet. I think he only threw for 160 yards. Had the touchdown that he threw to Deontay Johnson, who finally got his first receiving touchdown since 2021. But to me, the big thing was I felt that they ran the ball a lot better with a lot more conviction. And I felt like that was really, I think they a total of 166 yards on the ground. I don't know. I felt like it was a little bit different from when we felt like they were turning the corner in the past.
Yeah, it's going back to basically the roots, basically the strength of the team. Running the ball. I don't know if Matt Canada being on the field instead of being up above in the coordinator booth or whatever, if that made a difference. Maybe it did. He's going to be out there on the field again this coming week, but still, it was. That's really encouraging to see. I know you're probably going to point this out, but I need to highlight Broderick Jones because I feel like he had a huge impact on the run game and just overall he had a really solid game. Just some of the lanes he opened up for the rush. It was just, it felt like they were more, I don't know, cohesive. They were more in unison almost. I feel like there was more. They played just better together overall in this game. And this front isn't a joke either. It's not like there was just some like bad run defense. The Titans were, I think 11th going into this game, and so
they were a top half of the league against the run.
Exactly. So they weren't exactly pushover, especially with Jeffrey Simmons up front, really leading that front, leading that charge. So That run game was the most impressive thing for sure. But it's just really a matter of if they can keep this up or not. Hopefully they can. With Broderick Jones going forward, needs to play. He needs to start every single game.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll touch on Broderick Jones. I was going to save most of it for stock up, stock down, but he's a stock up for me this week. And just his play, man. He got the start over Chukwuma Okorafor. The news kind of broke last minute at right tackle, but not only did I felt like the talk with him coming out of the draft was he'll be ready to go as far as in the run game right away. His athletic ability, I think he ran the fastest 40-yard time at the combine of any offensive lineman. Like his athletic ability was going to translate in the run game right away. It was just going to be a matter of him developing in pass protection. But even that being said, the Steelers didn't allow a single sack in this game to Kenny Pickett either. Yeah. So, that's a sign, that's more of a credit to the whole offensive line, but he was a part of that too. And I'm with you, man. The time is now. This guy, you drafted him in the first round to potentially be a tackle for the next 10 years on this offensive line. I'm ready to go. He needs to be a starter at either tackle spot the rest of the season. Yeah. No disrespect to Dan Moore, no disrespect to Chukwuma Okorafor. Although I'll talk about him a little bit later too. But Broderick Jones needs to play. And I felt like it just, dude, maybe the biggest reason that this felt different was because it seemed like they were really running the ball efficiently and effectively. And this is about the time, week 9 of like last season. I believe week 9 of last season was when they played the Saints coming off their bye week. And that was when they flipped the script and really started running the ball with conviction and really found that offensive identity. So if they can continue to run the ball the way that they did last week and even build off of that, I definitely think it's a potentially sustainable identity for them on offense. And, one other thing I'll point out as far as the offense goes is they also won the weighty downs, as Mike Tomlin calls them. They were 6 for 12 on third down. They were 2 for 4 in the red zone. They also held the Titans to just 1 touchdown in the red zone and 3 and 13 on third down. So the Steelers really won that battle of the weighty downs. And honestly, the Steelers, would have had another touchdown had George Pickens been able to get that second foot in bounds, which, I mean, really, I wasn't in his shoes. I don't know how hard of a catch that was, but it seemed like a play that a lot of NFL wide receivers can get both feet in bounds. So we'll talk more about, the drama surrounding him and stock up, stock down later. I'm going to save that for then. But man, overall, I felt like this offense certainly did a much better job this weekend. You know what? We'll get into the Packers game a little bit, but I'm excited to see how they can continue to carry that forward.
Yeah, and I don't know I don't think you said this, but no turnovers too. That was a huge thing. Obviously, keeping the ball is very important in the NFL. And not giving the ball away. No short field for the Titans to work with, and I mean that pretty much made it helped the defense. You had to make them work the length of the field. So I mean that certainly did the defense favors, not having to give them short fields.
100%. And I mean, now that you touched on the defense, I'll transition right there. But yeah, like you said, no interceptions for the Steelers. And even though it wasn't a huge interception, Quan Alexander had that pick where the Titans were driving down the field. That was the one turnover of the game. So the Steelers defense won the turnover battle again. And I felt a really big thing in this game was they held, for the most part, DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry in check. I felt like with the rookie quarterback, even though Will Levis looked good, I mean, a lot of people are kind of already anointing him. I think Pat McAfee said he's like going to be the Titans quarterback for the next 10 years. I'm not ready to go that far with him, but I mean, Derrick Henry, 17 carries, 75 yards. He had that, short yardage touchdown. So it wasn't a bad day by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I'd take that from Najee Harris week in and week out, but they also didn't let him kind of take over the game, so to speak. And I felt like, I don't know if I texted you this right away or if I was talking to my boss who I was watching the game at work, but I felt like immediately you could feel Cameron Hayward's impact in the run game. Tomlin said he even played more snaps than he initially wanted him to, but I feel like he just adds such a different level, such a different presence on that defensive front.
Yeah, I was going to say getting him back was definitely huge. I mean, you could tell this run defense was playing better with him on the field. I mean, it's just I feel like if he hadn't played, I think this would have been a much more different story. I feel like Derrick Henry probably could have broken or had, I mean, at least like 30 more rush yards. I mean, and he just didn't in this game. I mean, they were solid up front. Sure, they allowed 100 plus. I think it was a little over 100 rush yards, but still, it's like that's an improvement, especially against one of the best backs in the league, one of the most, if not the most physical backs in the league. I mean, that's impressive on their front.
And I mean, the Steelers were, I mean, there was no sugarcoating it. They were, one of the worst teams against the rush coming into this game. So even just holding him to 75 yards and the Titans to 100 yards is an improvement. And if you can somehow, now that Hayward's back, if you can find a way for him and Ogunjobi and Keanu Benton to all kind of mesh, I feel like you could, I feel like they can reach another tier, even though Montravius Adams is dealing with an injury. He's another guy that's a run stuffer on that defensive front. So I felt like that was really big. And I alluded DeAndre Hopkins, too. Just 4 receptions for 60 yards after he had the big game the week prior, going for 3 touchdowns, with that connection early on with Will Levis 2 weeks ago. Joey Porter Jr., man, stepped up. And after the game, it came out that he actually asked Tomlin and the coaching staff to just follow him around the field. Dude, you know me. I feel like I talked about this a lot last year. I was down on Joey Porter Jr. Coming out of Penn State. I had no interest in him. When they drafted him in the second round, I was like, hey, for where they took him, that's value at a position of need. Man, he's becoming one of my favorite players. I'm falling in love with the kid. The attitude that he plays with, the chip on his shoulder that he plays with, man. The Athletic actually just released their like mid-season all-rookie team selections, just their NFL beat writers or whatever, and he was a unanimous selection at cornerback. So, I don't know if that really says much, but props to him and just props for without Minkah Fitzpatrick also back there to help him out, kept him relatively in check. Although I will say Joey Porter Jr. did also commit a few penalties in the game as well. But overall, I thought it was a job well done.
I mean, that's all right. The penalties are coming now. The bumps and all that will come. But I mean, he just has been. He's the Steelers' best corner. That's not even a question at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, and now I think they've listed him officially as a starter. So, I mean, that's a really good sign that he'll still be out there, be starting and taking most of the reps, if not all of them. But that's especially against DeAndre Hopkins. The fact that he said, like, I want to be following him like the entire game. I love that. Like that.
Yeah.
Like that's just like that's the confidence in. Yeah, there's the confidence in himself right there, and in his ability. And I mean, he did a solid job overall.
Yeah, and Tomlin even said when Joey Porter first said that, it was like, ha ha. And then later in the week, it was like, all right, like, yeah, you'll definitely get some looks on him. And then like into the final day leading up to the game, it was like, oh yeah, you're going to be on him a good bit here now. You're going to get what you asked for. So yeah, he stood he held his own. And I wouldn't be surprised if, by the end of the season, week 16, 17, he's playing 90 to 100% of the snaps on defense. I mean, he is frankly the Steelers' best corner.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
Yeah. So I don't have much more to add on the defensive side of the ball. Cole Holcomb suffered that brutal injury, so the Steelers are, that he's out for the season. But the word on him is he's still expected to make a full recovery, which that is good news. It was a pretty gruesome injury, and expect more snaps to go to Quan Alexander. I imagine Elandon Roberts will probably get a slight uptick, and I think we'll see more of Mark Robinson as well. So I'll touch a little more on some of the other injuries in the Packers preview, but let's get into the Eagles, who also had a huge win, winning 28-23 against the Cowboys this past Sunday. So why don't you get into some of your initial takeaways here?
I don't know if you felt this way about the Steelers, but like just going back for a second, because that came down to the last drive. Like it was close. They almost didn't win that game, but sort of going back to the Eagles, that was like times 10 of what the Steelers fans probably felt. I mean, man, that was oof. Eagles nearly blew that. It just takeaways, man. I mean, that was my biggest one. They nearly lost the game, nearly handed it to the Cowboys. But I don't know if I should go through just sort of like some of the play calling on those final drives. Because
I'm fine with that. I mean, like
yeah.
you said, the Eagles had to come up with the Eagles defense had to come up with two big stops in really the last like 3 minutes of the game, turnover on downs for the Cowboys, and I felt like, I think I even wrote it down here. I'll let you get into some of the specific play calls, but it was the Eagles having. I don't know why I lost it here, but they went 3 and out on their final 3 drives. 0 points in the fourth quarter. So I mean, you need to be better than that, and I'll let you get into some of the play calling you disliked here.
Yeah, so I mean, really, the first one I'm kind of looking at is the second to last drive the Eagles had, which they were pretty much just running the ball, and there was a 3rd and 3, and I mean that's and then they took a shot to AJ Brown. I mean, the Jalen Hurts' throw wasn't great. I mean, I thought in that situation, because you have the tush push kind of sitting there in the back of your mind, you could have at least run it on that drive and on that 3rd and 3 and make it 4th and short, maybe then go for it. Then the Cowboys start using their timeouts, and then maybe they don't have another chance to get the ball back. That was sort of the thinking. But again, I understand that the Eagles are aggressive, so I it was what it was. I was like, all right, fair enough. But man, it was literally a game of inches coming. I mean, back to the defense. I think this happened before even the last drive. It was they were down at the 6-yard line, and it was Dak Prescott throwing it on 4th and goal, and I thought for sure that the Cowboys had taken the lead because at that point it was 28-23, and then the replay comes and it's like, man, who was it? It was Shoemaker. How do you say his name? But the tight end,
Shoemaker. Yeah,
it was him, and his knee was down. The ball didn't cross the plane, and it was literally at the half-yard line. Like not even. It was like it was just so close. Such a tight call. But I mean, the Eagles, got out of that one, and then going back to the drive following the 3 and out. It was, I mean, the Cowboys had a chance there too to take the lead. There was that 4th and 8 that James Bradbury thankfully was there to deflect the pass away and then, get a huge turnover on downs. But then that drive that followed, I mean, Eagles again nearly blew it. AJ Brown bumping into DeAndre Swift on like a 3rd and 7 run play, and thank goodness for Tyler Steen, because that for him recovering it, I don't know how he did, but. Then the Cowboys had to use their final timeout, and then it was just so chaotic the last 3 drives, and
it was, man. I mean, the last 3 drives,
back and forth, man.
But I feel like it was chaotic the whole game, man. I mean, you could talk about that DeAndre Swift fumble that they ruled that he ultimately recovered it. Which I mean, that was a close call. That was kind of chaotic. Had they lost the ball there, they would have gone into the halftime with only 1 touchdown potentially.
Yeah.
And I mean, you didn't even mention the Dak Prescott 2-point conversion that he barely stepped out of bounds early.
Oh, right.
Had he been able to convert there, the Cowboys could have, potentially just tied it with a field goal there on their last drive of the game. So many just really game of inches plays that, one bounce one way or another. Who knows what kind of a completely different game it could have been. But I mean, I guess that's just how sports goes, man.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Summing all of that up, I guess the Eagles were a bit fortunate in some of their fumble recoveries. And I mean, there was that one strip sack that I think it was Micah Parsons had. Some Cowboys defender, and it felt like it was just sitting in the air, and then Jalen Hurts got it back. But, and just the margins of error and how how different the outcome could have been on certain occasions. But in the end, they got the win. It was huge. I mean, I think offensively, it was a pretty solid game, even though, the stat sheets might not say it was all that great. I think they had under 300 yards total or something. I think, or just about 300 yards, which was a pretty low total. But again, this
Cowboys outgained them, but it wasn't a bad game offensively.
Yeah, exactly. Like Jalen Hurts was pretty decisive, even though he took that shot to the knee, which was really scary. I mean, everyone held their breath. Every Eagles fan at the link and just watching was just like, oh man, he was on all fours, but came back and he seemed like he was totally fine. I mean, just delivering strike after strike. huge 3rd and 7 to Devontae Smith. There was the huge touchdown to Devontae Smith over Deron Bland, who's probably the best. He's the highest rated corner this season, and lowest passer rating allowed this season. So I mean, it's just Jalen Hurts. He's just a warrior. First off, for playing through that injury and looking like totally fine, just shaking it off and still delivering. 28 points against a really good Cowboys defense, and I just the offense did their part, I'm going to say, but it was certainly made much closer than it had to be because of the play calling at the end. But still, the defense held. Ultimately, that's the thing that I feel like matters the most now, because if they hadn't, they nearly collapsed. This would have been.
It felt like a lot. It felt like a lot of. It felt almost like even beyond bend but don't break. Like,
yes.
I know that they had a lot of turnover on downs, especially late in the fourth quarter, but like just whether it was that touchdown where the knee was just down for the Cowboys tight end, or Dak Prescott stepping out of bounds, or even on that final drive, the pass to CeeDee Lamb when it was like fourth and like 18. And CeeDee Lamb caught it. I verbally was like, oh my God, like thinking that he was going to, get those at last 3 yards and get it upfield, but they just barely. There was so much of the defense where they were just able to hold the Cowboys enough.
Literally only just. I guess it's so tough because Dak Prescott threw for 370 something yards. Like, Dak Prescott played really well, even though he got sacked 5 times. And then there was that one sack Josh Sweat had at the end. That when the Cowboys had 0 timeouts left, it was after the delay of game when they had to move 5 yards back. And that was huge because obviously the clock was still running, and he basically took Hassan Reddick's spot, and because the joke is like Hassan Reddick's the closer. Josh Sweat. It's funny too because he actually was rushing from Hassan Reddick's side against Terrence Steele. So interesting how that played out, but it was just massive.
When he came up with that sack, up until that sack, even with the delay of game penalty, I thought that the Cowboys were going to go down and win the game. But once he came up with that sack, that was when I was like, okay, I think the Eagles can close this out. And that's why I was so like, I verbally was like, oh my God, when CeeDee Lamb caught that, I couldn't believe that, they had, potentially were that close to converting it, but, ultimately was still held short. But that sack was huge, man. There's no underscoring that. And really this defensive line, I think, 5 sacks on the day, it was a really good day for them.
Yeah, it definitely was. And then that just sort of cemented Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat because they had the most pressures. I think they're top 5 in pressures this year. So, it's not like they're having down years. The sack totals are about the same, if not a little bit higher than they were last year at this point. So, you can't say enough things about those two and just the defensive line overall. It's really just the secondary that continues to be a huge red flag. And CeeDee Lamb, we kind of talked, we said his name, but he had 11 receptions, 192 yards. Like,
that's no joke of a day, man. And
that's ridiculous.
I was even going to ask you as kind of just like a question going into the bye of like, what position group would you say is the most concerning to you right now? Because we've talked about the secondary, we've talked about the lack of depth at inside linebacker, but what's ultimately the position that's the most concerning for you halfway through the season for the Eagles? I think you're going to get into that a little bit here.
Yeah, it's certainly the corners. Secondary overall. It's just that. Again, I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt because they haven't played together very much. Byard, that was only a second game, albeit it was a pretty tough game for him in coverage, and I think he allowed a plus 100 passer rating when he was targeted, but still, I expect him to get better. And James Bradbury's just had such a down year. It's I think now in this game he allowed an 120 passer rating, which is just bad. The only good from that game for him was that 4th and 8 stop. That was it. The rest, I feel like he was getting cooked. And then Sean Desai, it's kind of tough.
Wasn't it also Bradbury who was on that big pass interference call on the final drive?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
So, it's just been more bad than good with him. But Darius Slay, I feel like still is the most consistent player in that secondary. And then you look at the slot. I mean, that's where CeeDee Lamb was the entire game for the most part. And Sean Desai had Sidney Brown, the rookie, on him at times. And then it was Eli Ricks, who was flagged a few times. It was just a mismatch. I mean, it's at some point I thought, maybe James Bradbury would have moved inside and you put Ricks outside. I don't know. But it's obviously much, much tougher saying it and easier said than done sort of thing. But it's concerning, at least because I mean I don't know. They should be better on paper. They're solid players. It's not together yet. They're not.
I mean, I don't know, man. At the same time, it's not like Bradbury's a spring chicken either. He's getting up there in age. Maybe he's a step slower than some of these young receivers.
Yeah, maybe he is. That could be, and that's why the stats are showing he's probably one of the worst corners so far this year. I really don't know, man. It's I just know that the corner, the secondary is the biggest concern by far.
Yeah.
But I mean, Bradley Roby's hopefully going to be back. I mean, he was the one playing in the slot, and he actually played well in this one game that he played, but before he got injured. But who knows? It just needs to be stability. Like it just has to be. Like they have to stay healthy. It's been the biggest issue the entire season. So I don't know. Best ability is availability, but it's kind of tough right now.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. Ultimately, it did feel like that was, probably the Eagles' biggest weakness up to this point in the season. And, CeeDee Lamb cooked them in this game. There's no sugarcoating that. But do you have anything else from this game specifically before we kind of move on here?
I mean, I just want to say this was a huge win no matter how you look at it. It doesn't matter how they did it. 8-1 now going into the bye. So that's 2.5 games above the Cowboys, and they face each other again in 4 weeks in Dallas. So, I mean, adds a little cushion, and it only helps them because they have such a difficult schedule coming up. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah, difficult schedule coming up, but this game was huge to just carry some momentum into the bye. One other point, Kenny Gainwell finally got a touchdown rushing in the red zone. So Sirianni continues to go to him, man.
You know what's funny is I was sitting there with my brother and we were both like, why is he in the game, man? Like, seriously. And then they come up with this, like, Jason Kelce pulls to the outside. They run an outside zone. And I was like, you know what? That's like the only play that probably works for Kenny Gainwell. He's not a downhill runner. So I was like, all right, in that situation, fine. If you're running him outside, then that's totally fine. And it just, I mean, it was cool to see he leaped into the end zone. Like that was pretty cool. But I'm still, kind of against using him in the red zone. But that's,
I mean, dude, he only had 3 carries total in this game. I don't know if all 3 of them came in the red zone, but like that was one of them. So
oh man.
So I don't really have much more to add on the Eagles other than these are probably 2 of the top maybe 4 teams in the NFC as far as just complete roster goes and just ultimately where I think they're going to finish out. So for the Eagles to get a win and obviously the division implications was huge.
Yes, for sure.
So let's transition to stock up, stock down. I will go first here. Stock down. George Pickens was kind of my main one for the second week in a row.
Yeah.
We talked about he should have had that touchdown catch where he couldn't drag the foot. Just another kind of invisible game on offense. I think he only had 1 catch in this one again. But there's just other stuff that it's just like, why? It's always these diva wide receiver moments with the Steelers wideouts, man. I mean, going back as far as you want in recent memory, whether it's Chase Claypool, whether it's Antonio Brown, whether it's, even Santonio Holmes going back a little bit of a ways. But, he kind of lashed out a little bit after the game on social media saying, free me, deleting all of his Steelers stuff. Mike Tomlin said in his midweek press conference, it doesn't concern me. What concerns me is, his football, what he does on the football field. And he said the George Pickens social media stuff is a pebble in his shoe. For what it's worth. So, a big thing that kind of got to me was Deontay Johnson scoring his first touchdown since 2021. And George Pickens didn't even go over and congratulate him. Just kind of was the first person to head back to the sideline.
Yeah.
It's like have a little bit of respect and appreciation and camaraderie with your teammates.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really don't want him to turn into Antonio Brown, the Chase Claypools of the world. I don't want that at all, because he's such a skilled player, such a talented player. I mean, some of the catches he makes are ridiculous. And I know it's kind of a rough patch right now, but they at least they won still. I don't know. There's that positive. It's not all about him, and I think he had 2 receptions and like -1 yards, which is, I think I only know that because I have him in my fantasy team. But I mean, seeing that, I was a bit disappointed, but no, seeing this stuff after was even more. I was just like, nah, man, like it can't be this way, dude.
I think part of the reason for this is, the way that I kind of anticipated it going when Deontay Johnson came back was that was going to free up Pickens from some of these double teams. Yeah. But I think what it's really shown is teams are just focusing in on stopping George Pickens, and Deontay Johnson has had 2 really good games as a result because he's not getting as much attention. So, I mean, I guess that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles, but I mean, it's ultimately just going to come down to Kenny Pickett finding him when he is on those one-on-one matchups. And George Pickens just, if you're one of these top-tier receivers, the top-tier receivers beat double teams. I mean, that's what it also partially comes down to here. And you just got to keep working and make the most of your opportunities. Like when you have a chance at a touchdown catch, make sure you get that second foot in bounds.
Yeah, should have had it, man.
Yeah. So my other kind of stock up, stock down, kind of like one of each, but it's Broderick Jones and Chukwuma Okorafor. Supposedly the reason Chukwuma Okorafor was benched, there was rumors before the game that it was because he was banged up a little bit. He came out and said after it was because of disciplinary reasons stemming from the way he the way he reacted following the loss the week prior to the Jaguars. So, Tomlin even confirmed, yes, that was the reason. And Broderick Jones got the opportunity and made the most of it. And, whether it's in that spot, Chukwuma Okorafor is one of the highest paid players on the Steelers. So, that's kind of something to keep in mind as to whether they're going to, fully bench him. But Broderick Jones has to start one way or another, whether it's over Okorafor or over Dan Moore Jr. And, Okorafor may have cost himself his starting role the rest of the season.
Yeah, potentially. And, Broderick Jones is listed above him as right tackle. So,
yeah, I don't feel bad about it, man. I mean, no. I feel like in one game, Broderick Jones even kind of showed he's the better player. So
I mean, he came in earlier in the season too at one point, and he looked good. I can't remember which game it was.
That was when Dan Moore Jr. was out with the injury.
Yes.
That was probably going back to week maybe 7 or 8 at this point. But yes, you are maybe even earlier than that, maybe week 6 or 7. But yeah, you're right. And yeah, Broderick Jones is the future here. So that's pretty much all I have for stock up, stock down. I talked a lot about Joey Porter Jr. I'd give him another stock up. I mean, I'm not going to go into detail on him again, but his stock is certainly up as well. And overall, I just feel like this Steelers defense, with Joey Porter Jr. getting more snaps and Cam Hayward, coming back, can potentially limit the opposing offenses more on how many yards are gained. So overall, I think the Steelers defense is kind of in a stock up situation right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. Especially against Will Levis, who kind of lit it up in his first start the week prior. But I guess we'll turn it over to the Eagles. Man, okay. Who do I start with? Do I go stock up or stock? Okay, you know what? I'll go stock up first, I guess. I feel like I didn't even mention one of my favorite players on the team, Brandon Graham. I didn't really touch on him very much, but he absolutely deserves a stock up for getting a sack and a half. I mean, he had back-to-back sacks on, I think it was the drive where, hold on, which one was it? It was, when the Eagles were leading 28-23, and it was that play where Shoemaker he was short of the goal line. So he was a big part in kind of stopping and preserving that lead for the Eagles. And he also had a tackle for a loss at one point. He was also the person chasing the player chasing down Dak Prescott when he stepped out of bounds and didn't get the 2-point conversion on the drive before. So and he only played 18 snaps, which that's only 24%. I mean, he's definitely not getting any younger, but to see that he's still contributing at such a high level, and especially in such key moments against Dallas this past weekend, I mean, I feel like that's certainly worthy of the stock cup.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. He had a big game, and like we kind of touched on, all these edge rushers really had a big game, and it was good to see him play so well. And that he's getting up there in age, but he's certainly still a contributor on this team.
Yeah, I love him. BG, the best trash talker there is, and one of the best in the league at trash talking. But I'll go to another defender in my stock up. Zach Cunningham. I feel like he definitely deserves a nod. He had 10 tackles, 8 solo, tackle for a loss, a pass defense, and continues to play just about every single snap. He did play every single one of them this past week, and he's been their most consistent linebacker. I mean, their best linebacker. Especially with some injuries here and there amongst that room, but the fact that he came in late in what was it, late in training camp or
right near the end
season, yeah. So
yeah, he came along when him and Miles Jack both got that deal near the end of training camp.
Yeah, and then the fact that he's still starting and still going strong, I mean, it's good to see. At least there's an experienced player there that's still able to contribute.
Yeah, they're going to need him to step up more now that Nakobe Dean is back on the IR.
Yep, and that's exactly where I'm going with my stock down. Nakobe Dean, man, it's tough, dude. I mean, a second injury this year. It's a Lisfranc sprain. I don't really know what that is, but I know it's foot related.
Yeah.
So he's gonna miss the next 4 games, like as you said, and it's. I'm getting to the point with him where I'm just like, man, I don't know if if he will ever be, what he was at Georgia, as like a end-to-end and a really athletic linebacker. I don't know. People are saying, oh, it's because of his size that he's getting injured. I just don't think that's true. I just think he's getting unlucky with some of these injuries, but it still kind of doesn't change the fact that he can't be on the field. He's unable to show his potential. I mean, I don't know if he'll even be out, or he might come back this season. There's no timetable yet, but for such a promising player who fell in the draft, it fell all the way to the 3rd round, and Eagles, thought it was a steal. A lot of people thought it was a steal for them, and for him to again be on IR and still not playing up to what we thought his potential would be is certainly a reason for him to be stock down. And just in that game, he was kind of lost at times. So, I mean, it's tough. I hate to see a lot. Like I thought he was going to be really good, and I feel bad for him. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big fan of him coming out of Georgia, and just reading a lot about his background and personality. Seemed like a really good character guy. But I mean, if he can't stay on the field, there's nothing the Eagles can really do.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, Nicholas Morrow, who is going to step in, and hey, he looked good coming in, so it's not all doom and gloom here. So, and then my other stuck down was secondary, but I'm not going to go back to that. We've
touched on that a lot. I mean, I feel like until someone steps up or everybody can get healthy and kind of play up to what is expected of them, do you feel that those are the two? One of those two things needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, both probably. I don't know. I mean, it just need to stay healthy, man. And this bye week should help, though. That's.
I don't even. I hate even referring to it as the secondary. I really do feel that it more or less comes down to the corners primarily. I mean, I know Kevin Byard's still getting acclimated, but I feel like Reed Blankenship overall has had a solid season. I think Kevin Byard, once he gets settled, is going to be the real deal. And it's just outside of Slay, these other corners need to be better, or someone needs to step up.
Yeah, I mean, we've been kind of saying that for weeks now, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will move on now and preview this Steelers game against the Packers. The Eagles on the bye this week, but this is the last of a 3-game homestand for the Steelers. the Packers coming into this game as a losers of 4 of their last 5 games. They beat, had Matthew Stafford been healthy last week for the Rams, it could have potentially been losers of their last 5 games.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, the biggest thing that I'm kind of keeping my eye on, we talked about it. The Steelers ran the ball a lot better this past week, and the Packers defense is bottom 10 against the rush. I feel like that's the primary matchup that, you have to have your eye on as far as what the Steelers are going to do on offense. I mean, they've improved there, and I feel like I just want to continue to see them, pound the rock, convert these third downs, keep the ball moving, and just continue to – when you can stay on the field and get these running backs more opportunities, you can see that after last week, this offensive line is capable of getting push and is capable of running the football. So, that's kind of the main area of where I'm going to have my attention to as far as offensively speaking.
Yeah, no, they have to rely on the run game. I mean, the Packers are good against the pass. I think they're 8th in the league overall. So, I mean, when there's a weakness, when there's like a clear weakness, I feel like you have to go after, especially when, you might consider that your strength, running the football. I mean, I think they should keep pounding it. And I mean, they have some good players, but it's just for some reason they can't stop the run. They're not very good at it. Even though they have Kenny Clark, who's one of the better defensive tackles, or I guess he was an edge rusher, but I mean, he can play anywhere along that line, but still, I think the Steelers should be able to take advantage of this run.
Now, I mean, as far as the passing attack goes, the Packers, I think you said just now they've been 8th. I know they're top 10 against the pass this season, but I imagine that more of the attention is going to go to George Pickens again.
Yeah,
probably with Jair Alexander on him. Most of the time, I haven't heard anything on if he's going to follow Pickens or stick to one side. But if that's the case, Darnell Savage and Eric Stokes have both been on the IR for this Packers team. So there's some inexperience in the secondary for the Packers too. So I could still see Deontay Johnson having another big game and being the one who can primarily feast against this secondary. So, George Pickens may not like to hear that, but I do think that, if the Steelers throw the ball, he's going to be the one that's going to get the most looks here.
Yeah. I mean, if he's not following, then they both should get a fair amount of targets. But if he's following Pickens, then Deontay Johnson's definitely going to take advantage of that, whoever matches up against him.
Yeah. As far as the defense goes and, Jordan Love in this Packers offense, I mean, dude, tell me if I'm outlandish for saying this. There's nobody on the Packers offense that I'm really scared of. In past seasons, it would have been, I'm scared of Aaron Jones having a big day. Back when, Devontae Adams was the wide receiver there, they don't really have a clear number one since he left. So there's nobody that, that's been the Steelers' problem is the past, is a clear number one receiver. So far this season has been a clear number one receiver having a big day or, a running back having a big day. I'm just not, there's nobody that I'm like, all right, we really got to cue in on this guy. This could be a problem. It's just, they need to just ultimately slow, keep this Packers offense kind of hemmed in and don't let them get into the end zone. And I think that the Steelers should be able to have success.
I mean, the Packers haven't scored 21 points in like 5 or 6 straight games. And
I'm pretty sure the Steelers defense has also held opponents under 20 points in like their last 5 games. So
so
that kind of feeds into each other.
Exactly. So I think, I mean, the Packers, at least from watching them a couple times, they're not anything special. I mean, they're very young, but inexperienced receivers. I mean, Christian Watson's been banged up. I mean, what's his name? Jaden Reed. I mean, he's all right. Again, like you said,
slot rookie wide receiver. Yeah, I mean,
there's nothing that's obvious or like any standout receiver here. So, I mean, even their offensive line isn't that great either. So
it's been
just top to bottom. I think the Steelers have the advantage.
I think the Steelers are the better team, man. There was also a point I wanted to say here that Jordan Love is 7th in interceptions this season, and the Packers have a -2 turnover differential. So, I could see the Steelers potentially forcing a couple turnovers. And another point I just wanted to say about the Steelers defense is, I love talking about trying to find an identity for this team. And I talked in the past about how the Steelers defense was kind of, force interceptions and, make timely plays. I think they've really become a true bend but don't break defense. And I just said a little bit ago with Cam Hayward back and Joey Porter Jr. that potentially they could, limit the amount of yardage their opponents get. But when you look at the numbers, the Steelers defense is 31st in yards allowed per game. So they're, letting opponents get a ton of yards, but they're 13th in points per game allowed. So they're keeping opponents out of the end zone. They're making those timely stops in the red zone. I can lean into that being their identity of bend but don't break. I think that they can have a lot of success this season, kind of leaning into bend but don't break and, being timely with the turnovers. So I really like this matchup a lot this week for the Steelers, man. I think they match up well with the Packers. And, here we go, man. Win 2 out of 3 at home on this 3-game homestand. And, all of a sudden you win this game. You're sitting 3 games above 500 at 6-3 on the season.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a game they should win. I mean, they're also at home, like you said, they're at home and in front of their home crowd, and
also have
towels all around. It's gonna be loud.
Extra time to prepare because they had the Thursday night game. So on the back end, you have those extra days, man. And here's the final thing I kind of have to say on this game. The Steelers. Everybody's been talking about how they have yet to outgain an opponent in a game in a win this year. They're the only team above 500 that hasn't outgained an opponent. This is the game where they outgain their opponent in this game. The Steelers are a better team than the Packers. There's no reason they should lose this game, and there's no reason that they shouldn't outgain them, and there's no reason that they shouldn't win this game, pretty handily. The Steelers aren't a team that goes out there and blows teams out, but I want this to feel like a comfortable win where they're the better team and they take care of business.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, like Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, they're still pretty solid running backs, but again, I think that with Cam Hayward back, they should be fine. I would imagine.
So that's all I have for really previewing this game. We can get into the picks and everything, but I just want to know, is there anything you want to talk about with the Eagles, just this being their bye week? Anything that, any kind of just general halfway through the season type, stuff that you want to discuss? I just want to leave that open to you if there's anything that was on your mind regarding that.
I was just more thinking of what other teams are playing, other contenders in the NFC, and the Chiefs also on a bye. But I don't know if you want to
setting up a huge matchup in Week 11.
I can do that.
We'll talk about that next week for sure.
We're
doing that matchup. But go ahead.
Are we going to the picks right now?
What are you looking at specifically around the NFL?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll just get into that. The Giants are at the Cowboys this week. I mean, the Cowboys should probably win that. The Commanders are at the Seahawks. I mean, that's something to keep an eye on just for Seattle's sake. I mean, the Eagles are going to face them in 5 weeks' time, I believe.
And the Steelers play them towards the end of the season.
Yeah. And then the Lions at the Chargers. The Lions are sitting at 6-2 coming off a bye, so you never know with them.
That's a really interesting game as a measuring stick for the Lions because the Chargers have looked good in recent weeks, and the Lions, their schedule's pretty easy the rest of the way through. So this Chargers game is maybe one of the last tests they're really going to get.
Yeah, it's a big game for them for sure. And then who I think is the other contender for the NFC is the 49ers, who coming off a bye, 3 straight losses, whatever you want to say about it. They're going to Jacksonville, taking on Doug Peterson's Jaguars. That's a huge game for them too. I mean, they lose a 4th straight, man, and they face the Eagles in 3 weeks' time. That's going to be that only puts more pressure on the Niners.
And the Jaguars are coming off a bye too, so it's not like the 49ers have a big advantage with the bye week.
That's true. Yeah, they are. So both teams equal amount of time preparation.
Yeah, and the Jaguars are riding high right now, man. I mean, that scrappy game against the Steelers 2 weeks ago. Yeah, definitely those last 2 games specifically. Obviously, the ones with the division opponents, but a lot of juicy stuff for you to sink your teeth in.
Yeah, for once I can sit back and kind of watch from afar and just enjoy, or not stressed over an Eagles game, but
root for all these teams like the Jaguars and the Chargers to beat up on these other NFC teams.
Yeah, hopefully that'd be nice, doing us a solid. But
you get to root for the Giants for a week, Ricardo.
Yeah, I mean, I can, but they're not gonna win. I mean, I
Yeah,
think that
no.
the line for that game was like 16 or something like that.
Yeah, it's
The
ridiculous,
Cowboys,
man.
yeah, they're not winning. It's not close.
So,
It's gonna be a blowout.
so let's talk. Well, I guess one last question to kind of wrap up the Eagles bye week. At this point, halfway through the season, Eagles with the best record in the NFC. Do you see them as the best team in the NFC? I won't ask you about the NFL as a whole, but NFC. I said that the Cowboys and Eagles, that matchup, they were two of the top teams in the top four teams in the NFC, in my opinion, right now. But do you think the Eagles are the best team in the NFC halfway through the year?
Yeah, I would say so. And I kind of had to step back a little bit and think about these different kinds of ways the Eagles have won. And yeah, sure, they might not have been pretty, but ultimately you're still getting the win. You're still they all still count the same, really. And it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter how pretty or ugly it's been. I feel like last year's team kind of set some really high expectations, kind of unrealistic for doing it back to back. But I mean, still, I feel like I have to, for all the times I might rant about the Eagles or, might pick apart certain things that they could improve on. I feel like I just have to say, I have to appreciate the fact that what they're doing is just historic. I mean, doing this back to back seasons, going 8-1. I think there are only like 5 head coaches that have done this, 5 teams that have done this in history. Jalen
Yeah.
Hurts winning this amount of games and only losing one is something only 5 other quarterbacks. He's up there with Peyton Manning, like John Elway. I think it's these elite like I have to like sit here and say like this isn't a failure by any means. This is like I just have to appreciate how
It's
good these teams are.
fantastic.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, like I like to pick on the Eagles. Obviously, I mean it's my team. Like I love everything about them, and it's just like, but at the end of the day, like they're still winning, and I still do think that the NFC will run through Philly at the end of it.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, we talked about this before the season started. The Eagles, really had to capitalize on their early season schedule
Yeah,
because they do have this gauntlet that starts next week, and they'll have some tough tests without any doubt. And we'll have to see how they kind of respond to that, and how they ultimately come out on the other end once they get towards the end of the season. But to be sitting here right now at 8-1 and to feel good about their team and to feel like they're the best team in the NFC, even if it hasn't always been beautiful football, even if it hasn't been necessarily as high flying as last year's team was, they are sitting here with the best record in the NFL. And yeah, you can only hope that they can continue kind of this trajectory the rest of the season. Who knows? Maybe their best football is still in front of them. I think they certainly still have strides that can be made.
I mean that's scary to think about if their best football is ahead of them. Like good luck to the other teams. But
Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
I'm
Well,
still optimistic, man. So
yeah, you should be. So let's close things out with our pick segment. Obviously, we're not picking for the Eagles because they're on the bye this week, but I did update. We only started doing this week 4. So this is just from week 4 through last week, our records picking for the Eagles. Ricardo, you are 4-2 and just straight up picking whether they were going to win or lose the game. I am 5-1 straight up picking whether we are going to win or lose, whether they were going to win or lose the game. Both of us, one of our losses was that Jets game. As far as picking the spread for the Eagles, you're 3-3. I'm 2-4. So
yeah,
pretty solid stuff. My picks against the spread haven't been good, but both of us are well above 500 as far as just picking whether they're going to be winners or losers each week.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. What about the Steelers, though?
When it comes to the Steelers, you are 2-3 picking them straight up, and also 2-3 picking them against the spread. I am 3-2 picking them straight up, and I am 4-1 picking them against the spread.
Wow!
So
all right,
I've had some success picking against the spread for the Steelers, and let's get into it this week. So the Steelers currently are -3 favorites at home against the Packers. Ricardo, I'll let you go first here if you want to make your prediction.
they're covering, man. Like, come on now. Like, let's not get it twisted. I think it's going to be 20-16. I feel like even that's too close, but
Oh, you have 2016 for the game score?
yes.
Okay,
I think the
2016.
Steelers
So
cover.
that's a repeat of last week against the
I feel like that's kind of a safe pick.
All right, I like it. So I am going to go. I also think they're covering, man. I mean, how much I just hyped them up when we were talking about this game. They're going to outgame the Packers. They're going to win this football game. They're going to go to 6-3. They're going to run the ball successfully. Kenny Pickett's going to throw 2 touchdowns, and
all right, let's go.
they're going to win this game. They're going to win this game 26. They're going to win this game 25-18.
I like it.
They're covering 25-18, and they're going to keep pace in the NFC North, and I'm going to feel real good about this team when we're talking about them next week.
Yeah, man. I mean, they have to win. They should win. They absolutely you just hyped them up. Honestly, they could win by 2 touchdowns for all we know, because the Packers offense sucks.
I like what they're going with. I don't know if I ever really touched on the injuries with them, but Minkah Fitzpatrick's going to be out again this week. Montravius Adams trending towards not playing, but I like the Steelers' chances nonetheless here. So that's all I have for today, Ricardo. Any final thoughts here as we wrap things up?
Hey, go Steelers, man.
Go Steelers, man. I'll leave it at that. I don't think we really have anything more we need to finish out with. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.